I'm Pastor Todd Cruz. This is Pastor Alex. And welcome to our session. We're going to be covering a lot today. We're going to be talking about youth ministry, which is Pastor Alex's component, and then I'm going to be talking about young adult ministry. So we're just going to jump right in here, and we're going to start with young adult ministry. And how we're going to do it is I'm going to try just to maybe talk for about 15 minutes or so and give you guys some good stuff here up on the screen, and then we'll save about 15 minutes for some questions and you guys to ask, and then Alex is going to come up and do the same thing with the youth ministry. So just a little bit about myself. I went to school down in Florida, and I spent 4 years down there at a Christian college. I got a degree in communications and Christian leadership, and really felt the Lord leading me up here to Brooklyn Tabernacle my senior year, and I decided to move up here and just kind of step out on faith. Didn't have a job, didn't really know anybody, and I came up here 4 years ago, and I started just volunteering here at the church and giving myself, and that eventually led to internship, a part-time position, a full-time position. Now I'm one of the pastors here on staff, and I run the ministry called Transitions, which is the young adult ministry. This is something that me and my wife, Nicole, who's over there in the back, running the show. And we oversee and direct the young adult ministry, which is 19 through 29 years old. That's how we do it here at our church, 19 through 29 years old. It's not a singles ministry. It's not an unofficial singles ministry. It's just if you're in your 20s, we welcome you. So we have college students, we have non-college students, we have dropouts, we have grad students, we have young professionals, we have marrieds, we have singles, we have datings, we have divorced. If you are in your 20s, you're in our ministry. That's just how it works. And that's what works for us. So Transitions. We're going to talk a little bit about young adult ministry here, and I'll let you guys ask some questions. But first, just a question for you. How many of you have a young adult ministry in your church? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Quite a few of you. How many of you don't have one, but you would like to maybe start one or feel like you would like to reach out more so to the young adults? Okay, great. That helps me a little bit. So first question is, why young adult ministry? That's what we're going to talk about here just for a minute. Why young adult ministry? Why should we have this ministry? Why should we reach out to this age group? What's the purpose? What's the need? This, that, and the other. So first and foremost, there's a stat that kind of startled me a few years ago that I heard, and this is the stat. The least likely person to be in church on Sunday is a 25-year-old male. The least likely person to be in church on Sunday is a 25-year-old male. So that is the need. That shows right there that there's a need to reach out to this age group. So that's one reason why we do a young adult ministry, because there's a need. The second one, which is enormous, is the potential. The potential. And that's what I want to talk about. As you can see up here on the screen, there's 50 million young adults in America right now. 50 million young adults in the United States. That's the largest generation in U.S. history. That's massive. So we have to utilize that as a church and as we kind of move forward. Not to mention, these young adults, they're full of, and anybody who deals with somebody that's in their 20s, you know they're full of so much passion, so much creativity, so many ideas, a willingness, an energy, a hunger for God, a desire to make a difference. And if you can harness that for your church, if you can harness that for what God is doing in your community, that's an incredible, incredible thing. And then the last thing, which I think might be the most important, young adults, people that are, let's say, 18 to 35 or just in their 20s, they are the next generation leaders. They are the next generation leaders. They're not only the people that are going to take the spots of those that were before them, they're already leading the way. So you have to understand that, and you have to give them opportunity to do that. And sometimes this is difficult for people that are a little bit older, or maybe they've grown up in the church, or they've got a little success, or their church got a little bigger, this, that, and the other. And then younger leaders come in, and they start to be innovative. They start to want to do things differently. We start to not really understand them. You have to emphasize and encourage the need for generation to generation ministry. The young people, they need the old people, and the old people need the young people. So we have to do everything we can as a church to continue to bridge this gap. So these young adults are next generation leaders. Just for example, Brooklyn Tabernacle, when it started, Pastor Cimbala was 27 years old. Billy Graham, when he was already preaching to tens and tens and tens of thousands of people all over the world, he was in his 20s. And a lot of biblical scholars even say that the disciples were in their late 20s or early 30s. So there's an enormous amount of potential with this age group. So we have to kind of realize that, recognize that, and just cater our ministry and our churches towards that as best as we can. Let me put the next slide up there. Just so you guys know, all the slides, everything you see today, you're going to get a handout at the end that has everything on it. So don't feel too pressured to write down every note or any word. Yeah, some of you guys just relax. There's going to be a handout on the way out, so don't worry about that. Our mission statement, which shouldn't be anybody else's mission statement. This is just what works for us, and that's really the purpose of this whole workshop, just as a little bit of a disclaimer, we're just sharing what's worked for us, what we've seen God help us with, as long as what has been our struggles and what has been our challenges and the things that me and Pastor Alex, our youth pastor, we're still wrestling with, we're still trying to figure out, we're still trying to seek God about. So hopefully you guys can just take a couple nuggets from us. But this is the mission statement for our young adult ministry, a community that connects, encourages, and equips young adults for their God-given purpose. That's our mission statement. Our ministry is full of a lot of different components. We have different teams within the ministry. We can put those up. We have a hospitality team. We have a creative team. We have an administrative team, a missions team, a worship team, a marketing team, a child care team, a phone team, a few other teams that we're trying to revamp and redevelop right now. But these are important. And we have leaders and coordinators over various teams within the ministry and different opportunities and avenues for the young adults to really get involved with. So I'm just going to run through a couple of the events that we do as a young adult ministry and kind of tell you a little bit about what we're doing. This is just some of the flyers and graphics that go along with our events. This was a conference that we did last March called Ignite 2010. We had Francis Chan come and speak. Pastor Simbala was there. Israel Newbury put on a concert. We did like a conference-wide outreach all throughout the city. It was about the same size as the pastor's conference now that you guys are involved with. This is our retreat that we do every single year in August. This theme this year was called Revive, so that's the flyer for that. Black and White Christmas Party, that's something coming up in December, and this is a mission trip to the Philippines that we took last July. So some of the different events that we do, I'll just kind of run through them and show you guys just what we do and kind of how we do them. Our young adult ministry takes place, as far as the whole ministry really revolves around our Friday night services. That's the thing that we have everything kind of flowing out of. So we meet not every Friday, we meet every other Friday night. And the off Fridays that we're not meeting is when Pastor Alex and the youth ministry is meeting in the same room. So he'll talk a little bit more about that. But our Friday nights are great. We're seeing about 300 to 400 young adults come out to each service. And typically, on average, we have about 50 people that are there for the very first time at every single service. So we really try to push evangelism and push word of mouth and push our people to invite friends and different things like that. So that's our Friday nights, and our Friday nights just have a time of dynamic worship, relevant teaching, amazing fellowship, and they're really great. We're seeing a lot of the good things on Friday nights. Now, on the Friday nights that we don't meet, what we're trying to set up and what we've done in the past is small groups. We typically try to do these in semesters, typically only 3 months. Short-term semester, so I'll talk a little bit about how we do that later if you guys have questions. But those small groups is us meeting every other Friday night. So when we're not having a service, then we're having a small group. And those small groups consist of about 8 to 12 young adults. There's 2 leaders per group, which one of those leaders is somebody that's older, maybe a deacon in the church, maybe somebody that's just more seasoned in the faith that can offer wisdom and experience that a young adult might not be able to. And those small groups meet all over the city, 4 out of the 5 boroughs. We don't go to Staten Island, but we do Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, and they meet in people's apartments. And those are great, and just a way for people to really get connected on a more intimate level, because the bigger the church gets, the bigger the ministry gets, the more people get lost. That's just what we've seen. And we also firmly believe, there was one pastor that said, life change happens not in rows, but in circles. And we've really found that to be true, just the way that people have connected and grown and matured and gotten discipled in these small groups, whether we're doing a topic, whether we're walking through the Bible, whether we're teaching through a piece of Christian literature, whether we're watching a video together. We do it a number of different ways, but small groups has really been a help to us. Next thing is fellowship. You guys know people in their 20s, they love to hang out. That's what they do. They like to have friendships. They like to talk. They like to just chill out, hang out, spend time together. A lot of times in our services, whenever the service is over, they're the last ones to get out of the building because they just like to be there. That's just what they do. So we cater towards that because young adults, they crave these real, authentic, life-giving relationships. They crave sincere friendship. So we try to provide that for them within the ministry by doing different fellowships. For example, we're doing a Christmas party coming up in December. And we take this as a really big deal. It's just a Christmas party, but we've been planning it for like 3 months. So we'll rent out a space in the city. We'll decorate the entire thing. We'll give it a theme to it. We'll sell tickets in advance. We'll sell tickets at the door. We'll cater some really great food. We'll have furniture set up in there. We'll have games set up in there. And we'll see about 300 or 400 people come out to this Christmas party. But what we do to our young adults on a Friday night is we push them, listen, invite your friends that are unsaved. Invite your coworkers, invite your family members, invite your college students, your classmates, invite the people that don't know the Lord, invite the people that don't want to have anything to do with church. Those are the people that we want at the party. And they do this, they really take to this. So it's a party, but it's a party with a purpose. And we've seen great fruit come out of these parties where people actually get connected. Because there's a lot of people, especially in their 20s, especially living in New York City or maybe where you're at, where they won't come to church, but they'll come to a party. So you invite them out to that, and then that bridges them to get finally connected into the church. So we've seen fellowships really be a big success. Another thing that we love to do is outreaches. These are big young adults. They really want to get outside of the four walls of the church. They want to be involved. They want to serve. They want to make a difference. They want to reach out. So you got to provide opportunities for that. And I'll talk a little bit about that later if you guys want me to, some different outreaches that we've done that have been successful. But offering these is really, really big. Retreats. These are great. Anybody that knows teenagers, they love retreats, and the same is true for young adults. People in their 20s, they like to get out of the regular routine of life, just what they do every day, especially living in a busy city like New York, especially people that are caught up in their careers. They're 25, 26, 27. A lot of them work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. They're totally burnt out. So to offer an experience for them, 3 days, get outside and just focus on Jesus. That's all you have to do. And we see these retreats, and they're great. We plan for them. We give them themes. We give them, if somebody get the lights over there, yes, they can see. We get them themes. We bring in worship bands. We bring in speakers. We do all kinds of great things for these retreats. And we see people get saved. We see people really grow in their relationships and whatnot. And the retreats are great because they're a huge momentum builder. So anything that you were doing before the retreat, whatever comes after the retreat, it's going to be skyrocketed because these relationships are built and people really get unified when they spend 3 days together and they live together and laugh together and cry together and eat together and all these different things. So retreats, it's the highlight of the year for us. It's a great opportunity for people to get saved. It's a great opportunity for get people more involved in the ministry. And we love it. We really look forward to them. And then the last thing is mission trips. Young adults, they have a sense of availability when it comes to mission trips. So we try to do that at least once a year. This past July, we went to the Philippines, and it was great. I took 23 young adults over there. It was a 20-hour flight. It cost $2,000 for each person, and we spent 10 days over there. And they loved it. We had almost 60 people sign up. I had to interview through everyone, and they ate it up. We went over there. We did prison ministry, evangelism, street outreach, anything you could do on a mission trip, we did it. And these young adults, they were excited about it. They loved it. They came back, and they told everybody how much they loved it, how much they were excited about it. So it stirs something up in the ministry. It makes other people hungry to do missions and just to get out there. So mission trips are really great. The next thing I just want to tell you guys about really quickly is 4 things that I think that you need when it comes to young adult ministry. These are just some things that I've learned mostly through mistakes over the last couple of years, but these are 4 things that I really think that you need to have when it comes to young adult ministry. The first one is uniqueness. Uniqueness. And what I mean by that is your young adult ministry has to complement, not compete with what is already going on in your church. So you have to figure out with those people in your 20s, I was just talking to 2 gentlemen beforehand, they were saying we got about a church of 400, there's about 30 to 50 people that are 20-somethings every single Sunday. What do they need? What are they desiring? What do they crave? What are they missing out on Sundays or in your church already? Provide that for them. It has to be unique. And there also has to be this mentality of, listen, you're in your 20s, you want to come out to this. You don't want to miss this. This is awesome. Have you heard of this yet? You got to come and check it out. There has to be that type of mentality amongst your young adults and amongst what you're doing. Now, it can't be a false advertising. It has to be worth saying, listen, you got to come out to it. But to create that buzz around the young adult ministry is very effective because we've seen, Pastor Simbala will give us FaceTime. Yeah, we market. We don't have a website. We don't really do things that well when it comes to getting the message out as far as marketing and media and that stuff. So really, our growth comes from word of mouth. That's where the growth comes from, and that's always the best growth. So we really highly encourage that, and that happens when the ministry is unique and when something's going on that's different. The next thing that young adults need is authenticity. Young adults can spot somebody who is phony from a mile away. They need transparency. They need real, raw leaders and ministry and opportunity. That's what they need. They don't want church talk. They don't want tradition. They don't want Christianese. They want the real thing. So when you're preaching, I say, listen, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you what it says. I'm going to tell you what it means. I'm going to tell you how do you do it. How do you experience it? That's what they want. That's what they want. So there has to be this sense of authenticity towards everything you do in the young adult ministry, and there has to be this realness and rawness to it. For example, we just did a topic not too long ago. How many have ever heard of the phrase elephant in the room? Something's in the room that's kind of awkward. Everybody knows it's there, but nobody's talking about it. We just did a topic recently called elephant in the church. And what this was people had the ability, the young adults, to ask questions about church, about Christianity, about the Bible, that they've been wondering, that they've been wrestling with, and nobody's been answering them. So they started to write these questions, they started to email these questions, they started to Facebook these questions, and they brought them all in, and it was about all kinds of things, from apologetics to Bible, to relationships, to family, whatever. And they started to ask these questions like, how do I witness to my homosexual friend in the right biblical, appropriate way? How do I do that? Or the Bible says honor my parents, but they're not serving God, so how do I honor my parents? And these different questions that a lot of times just don't get talked about. And we started to address these questions. We took a night to answer them, to spend time with them, to talk to them, to counsel them, to pray with them, to say, let's look at what the scriptures say. And when we didn't know, or when it was a gray area, we would say we don't know. But just the idea of being real and raw and authentic, they gravitated. They wanted part 2. They wanted part 3. They wanted to keep going. And it was excellent. We saw over 500 questions that came in that we had to go through. So that was really important. And that all roots out of authenticity. The next thing is personal growth. Most young adults are interested in personal growth. And a lot of them are dedicated towards personal growth. Now, you may not realize that or think that, but I've noticed that when you challenge a young adult, when you raise the bar, when you raise the standard, a lot of times they will arise to the occasion. But they're waiting on somebody to do that. They're waiting on somebody to teach them, to sit them down, to point out a blind spot in their life, to challenge them, to speak truth to them, obviously all in love and out of a genuine concern for them and their well-being and their growth. But I've seen when you do that, they really respond well. So providing anything you possibly can to cater towards their personal growth is really big. And then the last thing is opportunity. You got to give them opportunity. Opportunities to lead, opportunities to serve, opportunities to contribute to the ministry and to the church at large. And when you do that, you see them thrive. One thing that I always like to do is when you place someone in a position that matches their passion, they will excel. That's what I've noticed. And that's not only true with 20s, that's true with anybody. Place someone in the position that they are passionate about, that they are gifted in, and watch them excel. For example, the Christmas party that we're putting on, that takes our creative coordinator that's doing that, and that takes our event coordinator that's doing that. I have nothing to do with that. They just come to me when there's a problem or they need money. That's the only time I'm involved. So they're doing it, they're running with it, and it's one of the greatest events that we put on throughout the whole year. And people will come to me and say, oh, you're the leader, this was great, it was awesome, what a night, and I'll say, it was great because I had nothing to do with it. They did it because I put them in that position. So you got to give young adults opportunities for that. Lastly is this, and this is nothing new to you guys already know that, that's why you're here at this conference. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So I am big on leadership, especially because our young adult ministry is run by young adults. So it's peer-to-peer leadership. So our leaders really have to be on point. So these are 3 of the things that I just expect from them and continually communicate to them is commitment. They've got to be dependable. Character, they have to be an example. And Christ-likeness, they have to be a servant. It's not about them. It's always about him. So those are the things that I ask for in the leaders, and they really rise to the occasion. And I develop them, I disciple them. I have a core team of about 20, and then out of that, there's different coordinators and facilitators and whatnot. So it really works out well. And then lastly, I just want to give you guys a couple resources, and you guys will get this on the way out as well. But these are some books that have helped me and that are really catered towards young adults and just leaders, and not only reaching out to them and ministering to them and ideas, but really understanding them. These are great books, so I won't walk through them, but those will be on the paper on the way out. And then the next is a couple websites, I think. www.qideas.org, youngadults.org, and Threads Media. These are great for just resources and ideas and what other young adult ministries are doing. These are really great. I have some magazine recommendations for you as well on the way out. And then, of course, we're young people, so we're on Twitter and Facebook, and you guys could even check that out if you guys want to and see kind of what our ministry is doing, look at pictures, videos, events, kind of this, that, and the other. So sorry to talk so fast, but we're trying to do a lot. So that's everything in regards to young adult ministry. So I just want to take a couple minutes before we address youth ministry to see if anybody has any questions pertaining to young adult ministry. Yes. So the question is really these young adults that find themselves very passionate about maybe things outside of the church, things that are not really of God. So but they're still in the church. So how do we get them more passionate about God, about the Lord, about the things of God? Yeah. That's a great question, and that's a very true statement too. Young adults, a lot of times young adults, they have a lot of passion, they have a lot of zeal, but they lack wisdom and maturity. So you have to balance that out. And I think the key is really discipleship. So getting them into the church on Sunday, that's not going to cut it. Having one small group for them, that's not going to cut it. It's really going to be being involved in their lives and discipling them, making sure that these young adults are becoming the men and women of God that they were created to be, and I say that to them constantly. I say, listen, it's not so much important what you're doing as to who you are becoming. God's more interested in who you're becoming than what it is that you are doing. So that's reflected in how we do everything, not only our Friday night services, but our small groups, but our activities, the way in which my core team of 20 leaders is really getting involved and taking these people underneath their wings and calling them throughout the week and texting them and getting involved in their life and say, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Are you managing your money? Are you managing your time? What type of things are you watching on TV? What are you struggling with? Doing those types of things gets into their life, and you start to be able to balance things out. And you correct them. You correct them when you need to correct them. And I've had that happen with a number of even people that are involved in the ministry before. I have one guy, he's very, very passionate about God, and he makes everybody, he makes that known amongst everybody. And he's worshiping the most passionately, and he's telling people, and he's witnessing on the street, this, that, and the other. But some of the things that he's going through in his personal life and things that he's struggling with and things that he's into with some other people, I say, listen, you better be careful because you could wreck your whole witness. You have a reputation about how passionate you are about God, but your character is not backing up your reputation. So ease up on all the talking, ease up on the passion and the zeal, and start to manage your life a little bit better so that way the passion and the zeal will actually have something to back it up. So I think the short way of answering that would be discipleship. You really have to get into their life and watch that because that's a tendency amongst young adults. Yes?
I don't know, but is it on? Oh, yeah. It sounds like it's on. It strikes me that the prayer ministry that goes on here is such an important tool so that the young adults are prayed for, and I don't know how you connect all of that so that because 300, 400, how many young adults you have, that's a lot to pray for, but praying them into the maturity of really integrating in the church and serving the church. How do you do prayer ministry? I'll be quiet.
Yeah, well, our church is known for prayer, so the prayer ministry is already something that's on point and going really well. So we don't try to duplicate that. We don't try to listen, come out to the young adult prayer meeting. We don't try to do that because we're already doing that well. But that's a great question because a lot of people struggle with their young adults and the people in their 20s in their church with listen, they're in their own world over there. I don't know what they're doing. They're a church within a church, and they don't care about what the big church is doing. So we are constantly being intentional about how do we bridge the gap between the young adult ministry and the church at large, and constantly doing that. So we encourage our people on Friday nights when those 300-400 people come out to the meetings. We say, listen, we've got services on Sunday. Come out to those services. Come out to the Tuesday night prayer meeting. Get involved in this. Get involved in that. Sometimes it has nothing to do with our ministry, but we still tell them, listen, you need to get involved in that. You need to plug into that. So we're always doing that. We're always trying to integrate those young adults into the church at large. So yeah, we're praying for them, and we have prayer amongst the leaders, and occasionally we'll do something where it's focused on prayer, but specifically praying. We're directing them to the Tuesday night prayer meeting. Oh, you have a heart and a passion for prayer? Get involved in the prayer band ministry. That has nothing to do with transitions, but it's great. Go do it. So that's how we do that. Yeah.
My question is how do you actually grow a young adult ministry? At our church, we had a small number of young adults, and now it's kind of like dwindling down. How do you stop that from, happening, and how do you just begin to grow it and actually get more people involved?
Yeah.
More young adults.
I think that comes down to, like I was saying before, what are the needs of your young adults, And if you're starting at square one, a lot of times you just got to start with that fellowship, okay? Don't try to put on this crazy, enormous young adult service because you might not be there yet. So just say, listen, all the people in their 20s, we're going out bowling on a Friday night. We're going to this sporting event. We're going to do this. Because sometimes the best way to do discipleship, the best way to do evangelism, is you just take the things that people like to do and just invite non-Christians to do it. Just invite those that need to be involved in ministry to do it. And you let those relationships build. You let that trust start to do it. You know, you put a leader or leaders in place to really get a heart for it. That'll be one thing to help it grow. But you have to start it. You have to start wherever your ministry is at. So if your young adults are at second grade, well, then you figure out, how do we get them to third grade? You know, not let's try to bring them to eighth grade. So to grow young adult ministry, you got to figure out your starting point, and you got to go from there. And you have to build momentum. Momentum is huge. Momentum is huge. I have a couple of resources when it comes to that too, if you want to talk to me afterwards. But I'm big on momentum, because young adults, that's how they are. They go by feeling, they go by in the moment. You know, you're only as good as your last service. So if you didn't get them last service, good luck if they're going to come back. You know, you didn't get them at the last event, good luck if they ever come back at another event. So you got to build off of what you got. So that's why, you know, doing something like a retreat, a fellowship, a small group is really important. And I would say momentum and keeping that word of mouth going. Just talk about it. Talk about it from the top down. Leadership, talk about it amongst everybody. And then also, I was going to say one more thing. Momentum, word of mouth, and consistency. Consistency is big, because young adults are inconsistent. So provide something for them to really commit themselves to. So if it's just one of those things where you have a young adult ministry or a meeting whenever you feel like it or whenever the calendar sees fit, then it's going to be hard marketing that and getting any type of momentum. But if they know that last Saturday of every single month, the young adults are going out and they're doing something fun, and it's always on the calendar, and it's always going to be talked about from the pulpit, and they can always find it on a flyer, and they can always ask somebody that's a leader about it, that creates a lot of growth as well. So consistency, momentum, and word of mouth, I would say, would be the big things. A couple more questions. Yeah, whoever has the mic. Yeah.
I was just going to say, elaborate on the outreaches. How do you reach out?
Yeah, outreaches, that's a good question, but difficult, because you guys got to figure out what the needs are of your community, what type of reaching out you need to be doing. With us here in New York City, there's 8 million people here, so the needs are never ending. Obviously, you can hit a golf ball in any direction, wherever it lands, there's a need. You can start a ministry right there. So that's just how it is. With us, we've done a lot of things out to the homeless. Actually, let me give this example. We started a ministry within the young adult ministry called Project Compassion, and this was a 6-month outreach project. So every single month, we focused on what we felt like were the 6 biggest needs of New York City. So some of those needs were homelessness, some of those needs were HIV, some of those needs were the environment, some of those needs were the elderly, some of those needs were children, and we would take that month to focus our teaching towards it and create an awareness about that need. And then the last Saturday of every month, we would go out Saturday morning, and we would spend all day Saturday engaging that need. So we did a homeless outreach, 8 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. We saw 50 young adults show up on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. They were excited. They loved it. They went out on the streets and they did it. But it really comes down to what are the young adults willing to do, what are they passionate about, and then what are the needs of the community. You can't force them to do anything. It's got to be something that gets them excited. And a lot of times awareness is key. So if you're going to do a homeless outreach, you know, getting a story to tell before you do it, telling a testimony of when was the last time you did it, showing a video, you know, capturing things on video is really big with young adults so they can see it. Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 more questions, yeah.
Yeah, the idea about prayer in terms of bringing youth out of isolation or into the broader church was mentioned earlier, but I'd be kind of curious about your thoughts, Todd, about how important it is for youth to be seen in other areas of leadership. You know, you talked about how attractive the things that you are doing, but how important it is, like, if they're on the worship team for the youth, that they're also in the broader worship team for the worship services for the entire church, those types of things.
Yeah, great question. Well, that'll be the last question for now, and everybody can ask me afterwards. But that's a great question, and that is really important, because easily the young adults, like I said, they can become a church within the church, and they're totally disconnected from the big picture. So making sure that your young adults, making sure your leaders, making sure your even lay people are involved in the broader picture is big. And we're really starting to see that here at our church more and more. Even the fact that Pastor Alex, who's in his 20s, myself, who I'm in my 20s, that we're on the pastoral staff and people see us on Sundays sitting up there on the platform, that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. Onaje, our worship leader, he's 29 years old. That makes a big difference. A lot of the people that sing on my worship team, they also sing backup on Sunday and Tuesday nights in the main services. So that's key. So we're constantly trying to plug them in. For another example is Pastor Simbala recently we have greeters on Sundays, at the doors and main entrances, and it was mostly an older crowd. Don't know why. It just kind of worked out that way. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing. But Pastor Simbala said, why don't we get a few more younger people involved in the greeters ministry as well? So he sat down with Pastor Alex and myself. So now Alex provided a bunch of youth that are going to do that, teenagers. I provided a bunch of young adults that are going to do that. So now on Sundays, we see young, fresh faces right there greeting people, and that's the impression that other young people see when they walk into church. Oh, well, this is, I relate to that. I relate to that person. I relate to that person. I connect with that. So that's really big. Yeah, Christmas cantata. The young adults and the youth are heavily involved in this church. If you were to pull out all the teenagers and all the 20s out of this church, almost every ministry would suffer. The young adults is full of young adults. The drama ministry, which puts on our Christmas and Easter productions, is full of Pastor Alex's people and my people. The BT Kids ministry wouldn't exist because all the workers are young adults. A ton of the young adults are going on mission trips and joining these mission teams. So we're constantly encouraging that, emphasizing that, celebrating that, talking about that, pointing that out, and just trying to bridge that gap as best as we can. So love to answer more questions afterwards. I got some cards if anybody wants those. But Pastor Alex is going to talk now about some youth ministry and kind of shift gears, go down to the teenagers. So give it up for Pastor Alex.
All right. Yeah, I have to. But to piggyback off what Pastor Todd was saying, with the broader picture, we want our youth to be involved in everything that we do, because we're not a separate church. We are one church. We are one body. So what we do, where it starts in the youth ministry. It starts in the youth ministry, where we promote the ministries that are going on outside of the church. We promote, we call it big service. Be like, yeah, we have big service at 3 o'clock. We want y'all to be there. And our youth come because we mention it, because the youth ministry mentions it. So now it becomes cool. That's the way our youth see. Now I'm talking about youth ministry. I'm talking about between the ages of 13 and 18. And now we have a ministry entitled BT Kids, and they end at 12 years old. See, for us, youth ministry between the ages of 13 and 18, that's decision time. That's where they make the decisions, whether to go to college, what college they want to go to, if I'm going to leave the house, if I'm going to choose whatever lifestyle they choose. It all happens between the ages of 13 and 18. And if we don't get them between those ages, it's time to pray hard. All right. So BTYM is the youth ministry. That's what we have. This is the logo. And you say a logo, whatever. It's our identity. It's our identity. Youth need to have an identity in something, because if you don't give them an identity, they'll find an identity in something else or someone else. They need an identity. And that's the way the world we're living in. We're living in an MTV generation. You say iPhone, you think AT&T, because as of right now, the iPhone's on AT&T. Okay? Well, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for identity. That's why youth, the teenagers between the ages of 13 and 18, they join gangs. They become homosexual. They're looking for identity in something. They feel like this is where I'm comfortable at. So we give them our identity in our youth group, and we say, hey, this is you. This represents you. But us as believers, our job is to give the youth ministry identity in Christ. That's our job, to give them an identity in Christ. So not only that, the way we give identity, if you go to the next slide, and we give the youth ministry back to the youth. How do we do that? We have created for us what works for us. We've created sub-ministries. And our sub-ministries work for us because these are the giftings that our youth have. So we have a group called Louder Than Words. And what does that entail of? It entails of a group of our teenagers who does like mime with songs in the back, but mime glorifying unto God. We have a youth leader in charge of that, and that's how they use their gifts unto God, by doing mime. And it works for us. I'm not saying mime will work for you. Don't say, all right, he told me to do mime, so I'm going to do mime. You have your kids going like this, and they're like, what is this? That's what works for us, okay? Another thing we have is a ministry called Rep Christ, and this is actually a rap ministry. It works for us because of the kids that we have coming in. That's what works for us. And for each ministry, and we have another ministry called Spirit Dance Company, which actually does ballet. It's phenomenal. And they do ballet to worship songs. And it's amazing. And that's what works for us. And what you have to do is fill in the blank for what works for you. You look in your ministry and you see kids, maybe you have artists in your ministry. Maybe you have screamo kids in your ministry. Maybe you have people who do poetry. Maybe you have dancers and they do a certain type of dance. Whatever you have in your ministry, you must use it so that you can reach the youth. And the way you give back to youth ministry is not by having them preach on a Friday night or a Wednesday night. You give back to them in their ministry, in their sub-ministry. So it can be with a youth leader that knows what they're doing, that's overseeing it and making sure they're doing the right thing and keeping them accountable. That's big, keeping them accountable. So that's the youth ministry. BTIM is the identity, but then we have sub-ministries under there where we give back to the youth ministry, not only in the sub-ministries, but also on the worship teams. The youth ministries are able to, the youth are able to go on the worship teams and be a part of the worship, and the kids are now seeing people their age worshiping God. That's a big deal as well. These are simple things. We don't try to complicate youth ministry, because when you start complicating youth ministry, you'll start losing them. They already have complicated lives at home. They have complicated lives at school. They want to come to a place where I know this is God, this is who he is. It's not that complicated. All right, so the next slide. We'll go into our leadership, and these are the things that we look for in our leadership. We look for commitment is a big for us. Commitment is very big. And I had to take notes because this is very important. We look for our leaders to experience the youth ministry first before they jump in. Basically what we're saying is we don't want to just have leaders come in just for able bodies. We want people to come in to know what they're getting into. So what we do before we meet with them, we invite them to a youth service. Say, hey, come into this youth service and experience it first. Look around. Let the Holy Spirit lead you. Pray while you're there and see if this is what God's called you to do. Because if this is what God's called you to do, now you're here. You have to be committed to them. Because you see a lot of youth in their lives, they have nobody committed to them. Nobody committed to them. All right. The next thing is being available. The thing with youth now is texting. And they'll text you 3 o'clock in the morning. They don't care. But you laugh, and that's true. I laugh too, but we have to be available because we don't know what they're going through. And that's what we let our leaders know. We say, hey, listen, I know your schedule's busy. I know you're mad. I just want to let you know this is what we're looking for. We need you to be available, because if that youth calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning and you miss out on an opportunity, God forbid, who knows what happens? And you say, wow, are you putting that all on me? It's if you're called. I'm not forcing you to be committed. I'm not forcing you to be available. You have to be called. A lot of times leadership come into the youth ministry and they want us to make excuses for them. Hey, we want you, I got to do this. I can't be here. No, we need you to be here because the youth are going to be here, so we need you to be here. They recognize you and they see you as and not to put the burden on you, but they see you as, they won't tell you this, you're their father figure, their big brother, their big sister, the only mother they have, and then you're not there because you got caught up in something. We need you to be available. We need you to be available. So the cool thing about it is, and I said this yesterday, is that you don't have to talk to them no more on the phone. It won't be awkward. Because the thing about it is when you call a youth, you can call them and they won't pick up. 1 minute later, they'll text you back. Did you just call? It's true. It hasn't happened. It's not like back in the day. It's not like back in the day where you call the youth and there's awkward silence. Now they're texting, and they'll text you their whole life story. It is ridiculous. It's amazing. And that's just the generation we're living in. And I'll be honest with you, I may be young, but I'm still kind of old school. I'd rather talk to you. I want to say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? But they don't want to do that no more. They just want to text. But hey, listen, whatever can get them to Christ, so be it. Let's do it, So being available is very key. The third thing is being aware of the kids' needs, being aware of what they go. And it's not just being aware by watching what's going on MTV or BET or looking at a teen magazine, not being aware in that sense. We are Christians. We're being aware spiritually what's going on in our kids' lives. Because if we can't get them there, if we try to get them, all right, we're going to get them with the MTV, we're going to get them there. If we can't get them spiritually first, then we're not going to get them at all. We're not going to get them at all. So what does that mean? I had a sister who's a youth leader. She's prayed up, and our church is built on prayer, and she prays for the youth. And you if you have a youth ministry, you have a youth or you have a teen, pray for them. You can talk to them, and I tell you this because I was a youth. I was in the youth ministry. You can talk to them till you're blue in the face about Jesus. And you can raise them up in the church, but they're not listening. They're not listening. Now, you have some that are listening that want more of God and are passionate about God, but when you have those, and you know who they are, not every youth, but you know who those youth are that are not listening, you have to pray. You have to believe God. I remember my mom, and I was in church, and I was in youth ministry, and my mom came in, and I was trying to have one foot in the church and one foot in the world, and my mom came in, and I was doing wrong, and she looked at me, and she was aware that I was doing wrong. I never told her I was doing wrong. She's just aware. She knew. And she looked at me, and she said something, and I brushed her off. And then she went in the room, closed the door, and she started praying. She started praying. And it's the reason why I'm here is because of her prayers. I believe that beyond a doubt. Prayer is key to see your youth. We can give you all the tips. We can give you all the strategy. But prayer is key for your youth to come to Christ. So the youth leader, getting back to the youth leader, she prayed. She prayed for this youth that she had, that we gave her, and she said, I'm praying for her, and God, whatever is going on in her life, I pray that you would do something in her life, change her. And she'd been praying for her for a while, and sure enough, she's riding on the train, and she got off the wrong stop. And she gets outside, and she got off the wrong stop. And as she's turning around to head back, she bumps into this youth she was just praying for the day before. And she's with a guy. It was a weekday. It was a school day. They were supposed to be in school. So she bumps into him and says, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Where are you going? Who's this? This better be your brother, And sure enough, she was like, yeah, this is my friend, and we're going over to the house. And she said, is the parents home? And she knew the parents home. She's just being, is the parents home? She's like, no. And she's like, then what are you planning on doing? Sure enough, took her home. And it wasn't, hey, maybe even if she didn't pray, it would have happened, but she was praying for him. And God made a way that she got off the wrong stop and bumped into that same youth she was praying for the day before. That's not impossible with God. We've seen great miraculous things with God. We read the word of God. We've seen things, right? So that's nothing impossible. So when we don't see things happening, we need to check ourselves and say, what are we doing? Are we just pointing fingers at what's not happening, or are we praying? All right, so praying is key. So Friday night is our youth night. For people, I used to be a youth pastor in Missouri. I used to work in youth ministry in Memphis, and they have their youth ministries on Wednesday because Friday nights are hard to get youth in. So we have, for us, it's easy. Friday nights, they have no school the next day, and they don't really do sports like that the way it is in other cities. But Friday nights, we have our youth service, and basically what it is basically outreach. We tell our kids to invite your friends, that we draw them in by using our sub-ministries that we showed you in the beginning, and we use all of our sub-ministries to outline our service. And then we have a word, maybe a themed word, an illustrated word, to reach them where they're at. The word is 15 minutes because the mind span of a youth, especially a youth that doesn't want nothing to do with God, is 15 minutes. And some of them, they don't want to hear it. As soon as you say Jesus, they're off. They're gone. So it's 15 minutes. We preach the word, and then what happens is, and you turn to the next slide, on Tuesday, we have this thing called the hotspot, which is tonight, and it's our Bible study. And whatever we talked about on Friday, we bring it over on Tuesday and elaborate on it because we believe those who come on Tuesday want to hear more, want to hear the word, and that's what we do. We hear the word, and we run around 250 to 300 youth. Then on Tuesday, you can expect probably 60 to 100 kids that come just to hear the word of God. There's no gimmicks, no dancing, no rapping. I mean, we have a piano player who plays a piano, and they practically sing hymns unto God. And hearing 50 to 60 to 100 youth singing hymns unto God, just worshiping God and knowing the next thing what's going to happen is the word of God is a phenomenal thing. It's very unique. But it's prayer. That's what it takes. So we have that, and whatever we talk about on Friday, we bring it over to Tuesday. And the next slide. And these are the events that we've done. And I would go along with a couple of things. These two right here, the party life and the decision, were basically themed the messages. And then one of the things that we did during the summer, very simple. It's very simple. We did flag football because the kids like playing flag football. And you're like, what does that have to do with anything? Well, our youth ministry started to grow because of flag football. Because of flag football, and I'm going to explain why. What happened was we had a great idea. I'm really not good at flag football, and the kids wanted to do it, so I was like, all right, I'm going to die to self and do it anyway. And they they wanted to do flag football. We bought the flags, and we said, invite your friends. Come on, invite your friends. So the friends came to flag football, and now what happens is these kids who are lost are now put into a Christian environment because everybody else is a believer. Phenomenal concept, right? So we're playing football. We pray together, and they're not used to it, but they're doing it because most of these kids are Christians here, so now they're doing it. So now all of a sudden, you have these kids that are playing football, and none of our kids are cursing. They may slip, and then one of our youth say, whoa, hold on. We don't do that here. We give the rules out, but now we have youth keeping the kids who are lost accountable. And it's their age. Wow, that's new. They don't say that to me in school. So now at the end of flag football, we say, hey, we have an event going on this Tuesday, a Bible study. And then the friends start talking, but yeah, you should come to Bible. That's it. All of a sudden, you have the kids who are lost now coming to Bible study on a Tuesday night because of flag football. And now, so you say, all right, you're going to do flag football every Saturday? So what happened was we stopped having flag football just to see what would happen. And sure enough, those kids started to come. Not only on Tuesday night, they started to come on Friday nights. And they started getting connected to the kids at our youth group because what happens is these kids went to their school. So now they're all connected, and not only that, we push coming to big service, we push coming on Sundays, and now you have these kids coming on Sundays to church. Not a youth service, to big church. Hearing the word of God, and now they're coming by themselves. Their parents don't come in, but they're coming just because of a simple flag football. Now, what does that mean? It means getting them where they're at. It may not be flag football to you, it may be camping. Whatever they like to do, you get it, and you put the cross right in front of it. So we had flag football, we had New Breed, we had a band who came, we had basketball, which I am good at, and we did that. We did Great Adventures. We did all these trips, and we actually did for you guys who have youth that are musically gifted. We actually released a CD with our youth rap group. We actually released a CD, mixtape, and it was basically all Jesus. You'll be able to understand every word that they're saying, and it's all about Jesus, glorifying God. The whole thing about youth ministry, and Warren Wiersbe said this on How to Be a Servant. If you're doing ministry and God is not glorified in the end, people don't come to know who Jesus Christ is, then it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. At the end of the day, God must be glorified, and people must come to know who Jesus Christ is. And that's what it's all about. We don't take away, we don't add in, we don't try to bring the world. We just bring Jesus. And that's all we can do. Next thing we do is Facebook evangelism. And Facebook evangelism is a thing that we have taken upon ourselves to create our youth to become their own pastors, their own evangelists. What does that mean? We have youth that run 500 to 1,200 friends on Facebook. For some of y'all, that's your congregation. 500, 1,200 people. It's true. And the reason why I say that is this. You have young people who have their own churches on Facebook. So why not direct them? Why not direct them on a path of saying, hey, why don't you share the gospel while you're on Facebook? Why don't you share your faith while you're on Facebook? So we did a whole message on it. Facebook evangelism. Facebook is your life. If you wake up in the morning and before you thank God for waking you up for a new day, you go on Facebook, why don't you let Jesus be a part of that? It's simple. They're using it, so might as well use it to glorify God, so that people can come to know Christ. And through that, we have had people who went to their schools, and we put up videos as transitions would put up videos, and we put up things that happen in our youth ministry, and the people from their schools that never been in church see it, and they're like, what's that about? Just by doing it. Just by having them belong and having them involved. Okay, and that's it, right? That's it. And then that's my wife. She couldn't be here. She's my partner in crime. She's the person that if it wasn't for her, I couldn't do this. She's not only because she's the worship leader, she helps out, but with this bond right here, it happened. It's all God, because she's able to reach the girls and reach them in a way that I couldn't reach them. I'm their youth pastor, and that's great. And there's one thing that I said yesterday, I want to reiterate this. When you're in youth ministry, I've seen this time and time again, make sure that it's guy with guy and girl with girl. And if it's a bigger situation, make sure there's a female leader with you. Because the whole time, a lot of times in youth ministry, the devil can get a foothold, and I've seen it a couple of times, and it's scary. And we don't want that. We want our kids to come to know who Jesus Christ is and do it in the right way. So that's my partner in crime. I love her. And I wish she could be here, but she's not. But she's here in spirit. But she helps me out. She's my balance and helps this youth ministry go forward. And that's it. So we have any questions? I do questions. What we do right now and what's going to happen next year is we're going to have a discipleship program called Boys to Men, Girls to Glory. And we're going to separate the guys and the girl once a month. Separate the guys and the girls so that we can talk to them, so we can disciple them. And there'll be male leaders that would be there once a month to keep them accountable. Because a youth can come to a youth service and, all right, no problems. That's a great question. Facebook evangelism is this. You may preach a word on, I may preach a word on a Friday night. You know, it hits home. And what we did was we said express it out there, because a lot of these kids don't know how to express their feelings verbally, but on a text they can tell you their whole business. And Facebook is almost just like texting. So they're telling everything what happened, how God moved, what he did in his life, and how the word reached out to them. And now the kids, their friends are seeing it. Their friends are seeing it. Not only that, we'll have an event that'll go on and say, hey, listen, we tell them if you can't reach them, if you don't have that boldness or that gift to talk to somebody, hey, you bring them in here, we'll talk to them for you. You know? So we when we have an event, we say, hey, listen, you tag every friend that you have on your list about the event. When I was like, man, this is so simple. And you tag every friend that you have on your list for the event. You'll see, I mean, you may not get everybody, but you'll see a growth in your youth ministry just by tagging them on the event. And if it's not the first day, if you're consistent with it and you have an event every other week or every month and you keep tagging them, they're going to be like, man, I'm getting tired of these tags. I need to go find out what's going on. Because it's the same way with talking to people about Jesus. When you talk to people about Jesus, they won't, at the first time, for some, at the first, you know, they won't receive it. But then a little while they get, all right, he's been talking about it so much. Let me just go to church. And then next you know, from those, a lot of people got saved through that by being consistent and being patient. The biggest challenge we face in our ministry right now is finding men leaders. That's our biggest challenge. Men leaders. That is, the women, y'all women, iron women, hear me roar. You are there. Goodness gracious, you are there. And we appreciate you women. But we need male leaders. We need people, and we're not trying to make you father figures or big brother. We just want you to be that example. Show them that there's a male Christian example they can follow, because if they don't have that, if they don't see that, they're going to follow the world. And they're going to follow these male examples that they have, these music artists, these movie stars, all these people, they're going to follow them if they don't see it. And another thing that Pastor Todd hit on that's really good is even married couples in youth ministry. I think that'd be great, because a lot of the youth are having sex before marriage. So to see married couples that did it the right way in youth ministry would be phenomenal, because they don't see that. They don't hear that. They're coming from broken homes. They're coming from places where the music videos say it's all right to be with somebody outside of marriage. So those two things are very key for us that we would like to see. Now, this is something that when I was in youth ministry, we never experienced this at all. But I don't know how many of y'all in youth ministry have been seeing this till recently. And if you haven't, for us in New York, when I came back to New York, I could not believe it that these kids are flowing into this. And this is the thing where I was talking about, where they're looking for identity. They're looking for somewhere to belong. And if we don't give them that belonging, then they won't come. Now, with that, I have a couple, which, you know, I preached on it, I spoke on it, you know, with the law, but then with grace and mercy. But they still don't understand, because they feel like they're being judged. They feel like, oh, God created me this way, so that's the way I'm supposed to be. And I gave them this concept, and I don't believe it's taken out of context. I said, you know what? You are created that way. He's like, what? We were all born in sin, right? We were all born in sin. So the whole thing about it is, it's the sin that's in us that causes us to act that way, that creates that behavior in us. So it's the sin. So yeah, you are born that way. But now God is here to take that away. And that's what we gave them, for them to understand that. Now some took it as, I understand, and they take it. But then, where can you go? Can you baby? Why should you baby it? Should you baby it until all right? We're going to keep them here because we don't want to lose youth, and we don't want. There's so much you can do when it comes down to that. But when you give it to them like that, for them to understand, then from there, then that's God, and then there's prayer. When you don't have an answer, prayer is the answer. Oh yes, that prayer is key, and one of the things that I've seen, and it's crazy, it's become something that it's okay, it's all right, it's normal. I remember watching this newscaster, and she got offended because somebody decided to pray in this committee hall. Decided to pray, made a big issue about it. I mean, it was on the news on CNN. It was crazy, a big issue. But when it comes to homosexuality and things, it's okay, it's all right, it's all right. It's now becoming, if you even go against it, it's becoming a hate crime. It's becoming a hate crime. Yeah. So the thing about for us, what we can do for us to stand against it out on the street corners and say, no, it just makes us look worse. But for us to pray would be a great thing to do. For us to come together, maybe even start something where online or even on Facebook, start a prayer about this, where God can reach those. Because if we try, the world comes at us and they think we're coming against them. But if we go to God, we know he can reach them.